Brigette, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Tara, how are you?
Hi.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here.
We've actually met in person once in Vegas, right? I don't
In
remember
Vegas, yeah,
It was
100%.
like back when live events were a thing, so it's been more than, I don't know, a couple years. But
I miss trade shows. I miss meeting people in person.
I miss traveling, and we just missed each other. I went to Australia in 2019. I remember 2019, and I just couldn't make it out to Sydney. But you are here. We are talking about being an educator and being a product supplier and the pros and cons of both. So let's start off with just give a little intro about who you are, who you serve, how you serve them.
Okay, my name's Brigette, and for me with lashes, I love lashes, and finding a product supply that changed my business and changed my lash life was fundamentally important. For me, it was the level of support that I got with Lashbox that made me want to be more involved with it. We never set out to become a distributor. That was not my goal. I was waiting for Kate had somebody lined up. Kate is one of our owners over in LA. She had somebody lined up here in Australia, and that fell through. When it fell through, she approached me, and I didn't think that I was ready to step up for that. The level of support that I got from them anytime I had a question about a product was like nothing I'd ever experienced from any other supplier here. So I had to have a really hard think, well, can I deliver that here? Can I be 100% for the customer? And that means stepping away from the customers in my own salon.
Yeah.
That those products had changed the options that I was able to deliver and the results we were able to deliver. So that was a really tricky thing for me. And I'm so glad that I did do that, because there's a certain level of commitment that's required as a supplier. And I think we're there.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's dive in. Let's start off with, we'll just go the educator route, and then that I think will lead kind of into the supplier route. What would you say are some of the pros of being an educator? Whether if you think it's just like this applies to all educators, or if it just applies to like educators under a name brand.
I think that being an educator gives you the ability to help somebody else in a way that you didn't have help. And fundamentally, that should be your only goal, is to be able to help other women, help them challenge the notion, challenge the education that they've previously learned, re-educating them sometimes, changing the way that they think and helping them understand the science in a different way. Because knowledge is power, but if we don't know how to quantify this piece of knowledge applies to this part of our application, and when I do that correctly and we bond them together, we get a better result, then that knowledge is like defunct. It's like reading a book on accounting and not doing your own accounting,
right over the head. Yeah.
Right. So being able to quantify that and actually put that into place is really important. And I love doing that for students. I love seeing them flourish. I love seeing them grow, to be able to deliver things they couldn't deliver before, to understand the ingredients and the products that we work with, whether they're Lashbox or not. Just having that knowledge and having them be able to break that back down and understand what's important for them and what isn't important for them, and how to troubleshoot during application to make their lash life easier. That's why we do what we do as an educator. Yeah, because I want to make somebody else's lash life easier. Like, why struggle? I've been lashing for 13 years. 13 years ago, we didn't have the knowledge that we've got now. This industry has changed so much. And I think that when we connect all the dots and we put it together in a beautiful picture that people can understand, that has power.
Yeah. And even you talked about in the pre-interview of like giving a woman a skill to make money off of.
Yes.
Career change.
Well, I think that a lot of lash artists, when we take our first lash course, we're like, okay, cool, I can make money out of this. This is my side hustle. I'm going to grow into this. And then we realize that if there were gaps in our fundamental education, that it becomes very challenging. Not only are we trying to grow a business and build a business that we were taught nothing about in our first education, right? Being a good business owner and understanding how to run a business is a separate portion to your qualification education, right? They're two different things. And this is why we refer to you all the time. I'm like, I can guide you down your business budgeting. I'm happy to coach you on things. There's only so many people that I can coach, and I'll only ever coach mostly my students that I've taught. Yeah. We're in a lockdown at the moment, so I've been offering that to everybody, but normally that's only for the students that I've been with, because that's all I can quantify. Like, that's as much as I can give. Normally we refer on to you for the business things, but I think that teaching women, I don't know, having them be able to build something that they couldn't see possible before. They knew that was possible, but they couldn't make the dream real.
Yeah. Or they're
And
just
so
like,
you make it real.
like, were you ever in the corporate world, or did you do something aside from beauty, or did you go? Yeah. So it's like that. I was that too. I was in the corporate rat race. I have my business degree, but I hated it. And I wanted something, honestly, and I don't know if you heard this of my story, but after I had my miscarriage, I was having such a hard time even taking care of myself that it felt empowering and almost like a purpose when I was able to take care of women through beauty, because I went to beauty school right after that. And so it really was this really cool thing. And I got trained in lashes throughout beauty school. So it was this, wow, I can make another woman feel beautiful, even though I feel like junk right now. And that kind of was my road to healing in all of that. So it's a really powerful thing, especially as an educator. And I was a lash educator for a short, brief period in time, where when your student kind of has that aha moment, because it is a tactical skill. It's not like business is a lot of theory and knowledge, and there's a lot of heavy self-talk that comes in. And when they're frustrated with the tweezers and all this, and then all of a sudden you can see after maybe an hour of working with them, it clicks. Yeah. And it's so rewarding to have that, just like, look, it's like shake and bake and I help. I don't know if you guys have that there.
It's the same feeling. It's the same feeling that you get when you make your client feel beautiful.
Yeah.
But being able to teach somebody else how to do that and have all the dots align and have that come together, that's empowering.
Yeah. Especially when
that's my reason why, as an educator, it's the same reason as why I did things in beauty to begin with, for my clients, to make them feel beautiful, and to be able to allow other women the power to do that. Man, that's life-changing.
Yeah. It's addictive.
Like, not just life-changing, like that can change somebody's life.
Right. And it's something that can't be taken away from you. Like, I know that's been a lot of the ups and downs that we've had in the pandemic, is of like, my ability to work has been taken away because I've got to stay inside and I got to socially distance, but still your purpose and your passion, especially when it comes to being an educator, where that knowledge can be taken online if needed, but that empowering of women, nobody can take that away from you. You can still find other ways to do that. If you're a lash artist, you can find other ways to make women feel beautiful, or teach them how to do their own beauty as a temporary fix during a time when we all feel kind of just like junk.
There's always still loads of things that we can share with our clients, even in those times. And if we're savvy enough and we've got the right drive to go and find it, we'll find it and be able to deliver it.
Yeah. Any other pros about being an educator that is just not the common knowledge that you would think? I mean, there's always like, oh, I can make money. I can make more money than doing lashes. We'll get into that in a sec, but other pros.
The other pros, I don't know. I love meeting women and I love engaging with them, because a lot of my students have been people that I've socialized with on social media, women that I've helped with, like, understanding, like a product supply. So going back to the product supply, they'll reach out to me with a problem in their business and I'll guide them on how to rectify it or fix it. And that's normally the experience that I have with them before I get to meet them as a student. So when I finally get to meet them as a student, it's like putting a face and a business to a name and a person. And I don't know, for me, that's like, it's exciting. It's like, it's like, oh, you are the face behind the message. I love that.
I mean, I don't know if you get this, but sometimes when I go to events, people fangirl over me, and it's the weirdest thing ever. Because most of the days I'm in my PJs when I'm talking to them, but it's like, oh yeah, like you're the person I've been messaging with for like years. We'll have that moment, I'm sure, when we meet in person again.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some of the cons of being an educator, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that's not the Instagram life and this passive income and this I'm going to make buku bucks in a weekend. So kind of give the real talk about being an educator.
Well, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And I think that there's a lot of mental preparation on your part as well, because you give so much on a day of education. Yeah. When I show up to class, I give 1,000%. And I'm not even saying 100%, because I give everything when I'm in class. So at the end of class, and it's exciting, you get to meet your students and you're giving to them, and you do get your own personal reward, which for me has never been a financial get, like that's never been the driver for me. But you give a lot of yourself. So you've got to be in a good place. You can't run on the smell of an oily rag. And if you are still hustling on a mouse wheel and you're not making good money as a lash artist, you shouldn't be educating other women. If you can't turn that business into a profitable wheel on its own. When I stepped away from lashes, that was the scariest thing for me, because I had a business where every staff member in that business was turning over $120,000 to $150,000 in turnover a year, adding to my business.
Yeah.
So to step away from that to go into supply was terrifying, because I already had it working. I worked really hard. We built the clientele. We troubleshooted the things. Like, I was able to teach my staff. We were delivering great results. To step away from that, Oh, I think that was the most terrifying thing. So
Right.
when you're in that position, then you're in a position to be able to teach other women how to do things differently. If you're doing it for the fact that you can earn $1,500 in a day or $2,000 in a day, if you don't have the capacity to do that in your business now, there's always another way to do it. But I don't think that turning to education for that reason is a solution.
Yeah, it's still a business. It's just a different aspect of business. So if you haven't figured out the business of creating demand for your lashes, you're not going to automatically have
And
demand.
servicing your clients, you can't then do that. You can't then do that to teach other women, and I think there's a lot of accountability that comes into that. The ongoing education for me, I take 2 to 3 courses a year minimum.
Yeah.
We're a part of a global education network. Now, I would never have stepped into an education role, even after 13 years of lashing, unless I had the global network of women that love lashes and love the products and love the science the way I do. Mm-hmm. Being able to share with them and to challenge the narrative and to question the how and why, and then to do more research and development, and then to find a way to quantify that, to explain that to other women so that they can benefit from that in their business. If I didn't have that support network, there is no way I would be an educator, I don't think.
Interesting, yeah.
Because for me, it's about a moral compass, and I couldn't put out what I don't know is going to bring value to somebody's life with 100% certainty that is going to impact either their business, their skill, or their actual lash life in a way that is worthy of taking those funds from them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, the way that I'm kind of translating that is that if you're just doing it for the money and you don't really care about your students' success, I think you put it beautifully, like you become part of the problem that this industry is trying to get away from.
Yeah, you can become part of the problem. Because often in class, I get students that will tell me after class, I never learned that in the beginning. Had I known that, or this makes so much sense. Like, this is what I need to change, or this is what I need to be focusing on. Like, why wasn't that shared with me? Like, I spent so much money on my education. I've looked here and I've looked there. And for me, that's heartbreaking because somebody has taken that person's money who thought that they were, and again, they might not realize that they're a part of the problem. They thought that they were doing something right and they were teaching all of the knowledge that they had. But without that educators' accountability to continue to challenge the narrative, to continue to challenge yourself, to continue to question the science, to grow with the science, and then to find a way to explain that. If you're not spending, and I spend 50% of my time on that in this business.
I believe it.
And that's a lot of time to be investing back into what you're doing. And sometimes it's not actual studying, it's putting into practice on my clients, which I can't do right now because we're in a shutdown, but that's why I still clients. And I think that as an educator, if you're not still seeing clients, how are you tangible with what your students are learning? How are you able to
you're 3 steps behind, if like you're not
experiencing the same challenges.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things for me when it comes to people becoming educators, because I get that there's more money to be made because you can charge a premium price. Just like if you were to do microblading, like you can charge a higher price for it. You have to have the way to set your students up for success, because if you don't get the testimonials and the, wow, this class was amazing, or I learned so much, you are fighting you're just trying to like get scrappy with students. And that's when you're like, okay, you can learn lashes for $250, right? And you're just like throwing out the discounts, as opposed to setting someone up for success, to have a skill set, to be able to troubleshoot on the fly. Isolate, dip in place is not the only aspect of being a lash artist that makes you successful, right? And even adhesive training is not commonplace, yet that is the chemical that can blind someone that we're putting on there. So, I mean, we could go on.
I don't understand how the theory and the practical can happen in one day. It can't. I don't
know either. I mean, one day every 6 months, maybe we break it up over time for a payment plan. But yeah, there's so much to learn.
With education, like you can't just teach a class or teach a student that one day, and she can't be expected to absorb it all in that one day. Although we put a lot into our classes, I don't have a problem when a student reaches out to me 6 months later with a question that we might have spent half an hour on in class. We might have troubleshot with somebody else. If she didn't get it, or she still got that question, you can't absorb everything in one lesson. So you need to take the time to re-explain it. And if you don't have that time up your sleeve to do that with, then you can become quite frustrated as an educator, and then you're letting down your students as they're growing. Yeah.
And they're going to get in their head and not have success either, because they're frustrated, right? Some people, they can pick up things really quickly. They can learn, they can troubleshoot. And then other people they have to experience for themselves. They have to walk them through the solution. Yep. Yeah.
And when they're experiencing the problem, they go, she said something about that. What was that? How do I put that into place? Right. And being able to be there for her at that point without asking for funds, because that was a part of the bigger picture.
Yes.
And that's hard to quantify. So you could make a lot of money on one day, but you need to be able to be there for the ongoing support.
Right.
Is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. So like incorporate any ongoing support, whether it's, you know, you can reach out any time in the future or just for 6 months, we'll troubleshoot, incorporate that in your initial price.
Mine's a lifetime thing.
I
want to see them succeed regardless. There's no, and I totally understand why businesses should have like a restriction on this is how much you get my time for. But for me, I'm like, well, that leads into the product supply, right? So as a supplier, I'm always going to be there. And it doesn't matter whether they trained with us 4 years ago and they don't get it and they need to come back and do another in person. Happy to help with that. You know, like there's always a way. Yeah.
So let's dive into the supplier side of it, because for Lashbox, that is hand in hand, right? And I was a part of My Brand Lashes several years ago. That's kind of where I got my start.
Hillary, I love her. I did many mentoring sessions.
She's amazing. She's enjoying herself now that she no longer runs that company. But she, so it was, you know, I kept challenging, because I was a business consultant for them for a while, but it was like, are you a supplier brand with an education component? Like, does the supplies lead into the education, or is it the other way around? And she started off as an educator and thought supplies would be helpful. So we try to push like the education was their primary goal, with supplies being the support aspect. How would you say that Lashbox is? Are they primary supplies and then education supports?
It's a supply system that gives you the ability to take the power back. Yeah. So for me, as a customer, before I became Lashbox here in Australia, I was a customer and I hopped on the site and I loved firstly, it was the shopping experience, right? It was exactly like me hopping online, clothing shopping, right? Everything was beautiful. Everything was well packaged. It was well marketed, and marketing my background. I was like, finally, some things that I can put on my trolley that don't look like I have to hide them in a drawer, right? And I was like, these things have got to be too beautiful to work well. Anyway, I got a little bit carried away with my first order. I think I ended up ordering $2,800 worth of stock and got it shipped to the salon. And within 3 weeks, I was working with the suppliers. I don't know, my fans were better. The strips were better aligned. I wasn't having the struggles that I was having before. So I got my staff to work with it. And then we threw out all of our other lash supplies. Yeah. So for Lashbox, it's a system of lashes that make your lash life easier. So every product has been, they're not just private label product. They're products that we work on the design and the science behind to make sure that there's a purpose for every product and that each product leads into the other one and they will work seamlessly as a system. Yeah. So therefore education goes with that product system. Not only that, Sylvia is so incredibly talented. She created that flower bouquet technique that changed my lash life. It changed my speed of application like crazy, you know, and I'm able to do things easier and better. So for us, it's about, there's the product itself, but it's a system. It's not just a bunch of random products that have been thrown together to look pretty. They've all got a purpose and a reason. And they're not that, like, some things are a nice to have product that might not need to be on every lash trolley, depending on where you live and what your environmental conditions are and what's going to work inside your studio. But I love that I can have them on display and that they look beautiful. Not only that, they work, which I was thought when I bought all that stock, I was like, God, I hope these things work.
Word.
But I had to go ham because the air freight shipping is so expensive. I was like, I've got to do this once.
Got to make it worth it. Yeah. So let's talk about, oh gosh. Okay. The pros of being a supplier or a distributor. What is awesome about that?
Well, I love giving women the same experience that I had with Lashbox, right? Being able to solve a problem in their lash life with a product, like whether that be like Glue Aid or LBLA Bond or the lashes. Like the other week I got a girl that messaged me and she was like, I've been looking at your lashes for the last 2 years and we are a premium supply here in the Australian market. These products aren't inexpensive. We pay duties and taxes to get them into the country. I've got to store them down here in the warehouse. There's huge risk there. You know, the products themselves are a premium supply. And she was like, I've been looking at your lash trays for 2 years. With 1 day of working with them, she saved herself 15 minutes on every client, right? Because the lashes were easier to fan. So she'd been looking and she'd been gaining the knowledge and the way we share openly on Instagram, because knowledge is power, and we should share that regardless of whether you take the class or not. You can go and pick all the pieces up and put them together if you want, or you can come for the beautiful class and we'll put it all together for you. But for her, she was like, that saved me 15 minutes per client in that day. She was like, they're absolutely worth that. So for me, it's about those moments. That's the best part of being a supplier, and knowing the quality is always there. With Lashbox, the best thing about it is that the girls in America test the products. So if we're launching a new product line here in Australia, a lot of my Aussie girls are like, when are you getting this? When are you getting that tweezer? When are you getting that? You know, they've launched something in the States. We are delayed here, but we are delayed because we are insulated. If there's a problem with a tweezer, if it's not going to handle being in barbicide every single day, or there's like a fault with the sealant on it, or there's a problem with a lash, we find that out before the product gets to our customers here. Yeah. So that quality control is like, that's paramount, right? Yeah. So that's what I love about being a Lashbox supplier, because that gives me protection and control, and we test on our humans and our brand ambassadors and our the girls in the office. When we're playing with new things or trying new things or questioning the narrative, or you know, those sorts of things. So that for me is important. I could understand why if you private labeled your own products that you could come across certain issues with that. So there's definitely pros and cons. For me, there's a lot of pros. Yeah, because we're a part of a global network.
Talk about the passive income aspect. Like, everybody's like, oh, passive income, get passive income going. And I have my own take on passive income, but what is your take on the passive income of being a supplier or distributor?
For me, like I said to you, it was a huge risk, because I already had a business that was doing great turnover, that sustained my staff, that paid me an awesome income that I was able to grow with. And then I chose to put my house deposit onto Lashbox. Crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. It worked out. It worked out.
Matthew thought I was crazy, because that was risky. So for me, it wasn't about a passive income. I suppose you could make a passive income out of product supply, but it's a lot of work. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of troubleshooting. And if you don't have the knowledge to explain to that customer, or the time to explain to that customer how to work with that product better, maybe you shouldn't be a supplier.
Yeah, I see passive income.
The passive, it becomes a full-time thing. And that, for me, like I said, it was the biggest risk, was knowing that this was going to turn into, even if I wanted to do it part-time, you couldn't do it part-time for long.
Yeah. So passive income to me is just, the misconception of it is that you're making money while you're sleeping, right? Yes, okay. I get members joining. No, you're fine, because we're tying into it. You can make money throughout the day, whether you're actively getting somebody to go purchase it or not. However, you are doing the work at other times where you're not getting paid, right? So like me spending time revamping our course, it's going to take me 6 months. I'm not directly getting paid for that time, but I am doing the work of $100,000 or a $200,000 business in that 6 months, right? 100%. So it's just, you're just taking,
I don't think it's passive at all. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, and that's where I think the misconception is. Yes, I can make money while I sleep. Yes, I get paid every single day because members join every single day, that kind of stuff.
Because my customer places their order at 10 p.m. at night or 3 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean I'm making money when I sleep. I still got to package that order during the business hours and ship it out. So I had to hold it on hand. Like, to me, that's not passive. And like I said, that was the huge risk. It was like, you already got a profitable horse. How are you going to flip that? Like, and if you're going to give this 110%, can you deliver it at the quality that it needs to be delivered at, so that those customers don't feel let down in their business, because they're a business owner.
And I think what is maybe more of a goal, in my opinion, is creating a scalable business. So a scalable business is where you're no longer trading hour for dollar amount. So with being appointment-based, yes, your 1 hour is worth set amount of time, but when you get the products, you can work the same amount but make exponentially more.
So that's definitely a pro. It's totally scalable. And I saw that as a pro when I went down the path of deciding whether it was going to be, whether I should have been doing the things, when I was having my terrified moments, because it is definitely scalable. So that would definitely be a pro of being a supplier. It's totally scalable if you've got what it takes to ensure
to get through the first couple years that are going to be very expensive.
Well, it was for us also. Like, I'd say the first few years I had Lashbox here in Australia, I didn't make any money off it.
Yeah.
I don't think I did at all. It was, I actually know that I didn't, but you grow into that, and it's knowing that for me, if we'd gone larger to begin with, it would have been a different narrative.
Yeah. And I think
to scale it, which is what I did.
Right. And let's kind of talk about the behind the scenes aspects of being a supplier and the costs associated with that. So there's talk about defects in products. It's not something people think about.
Well, yeah, there's loads of different defects that can happen. Like tweezers normally have a ratio of like 70%. So out of a batch of 100 tweezers that get sent to you, maybe 70% of them work. Some
That's
suppliers
30 you paid for that you can't sell because they don't work.
That'll get dumped. While, you know, some manufacturers may very well take them back, tweak them, do different things to them. There's a huge cost in that. You've still got to freight it back to them. There's time lost. You already paid for the supplies. You're waiting to get them fixed in hoping that they're going to come back correct. There's a certain amount of defects that do happen. For us, I love, like I'd said earlier, that the products get launched in the States first, that they get tested on humans.
Right.
Like, you know, our educator team and our brand ambassador team test those products before they go to market. They trial them out on their clients, their family, their friends before we release them to make sure that the quality is there. Could you imagine getting a bad batch of PBT because you're private labeled and you've not got control over where that PBT lash, we're talking about the lash fiber for
actual
those
extension.
I'm assuming that everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like, could you imagine having a bad batch of PBT and then releasing that? Like, you worked so hard to build your clientele up and to build those businesses that now rely on you. If you sold them PBT fiber that was breaking down when people got in the shower because of the heat and the steam, which means it's poor quality and it wasn't sealed correctly, like, how do you take that back? You've now just damaged everything that you worked towards. So that there's a certain amount of obviously defects that can happen, and lashes are handmade. Strips are aligned by hand. Not every strip is going to be perfect. Certainly having the right amount of sticky and not the right amount of sticky is going to make a big difference when it comes to fanning, but not everyone's going to be perfect. So those defects you need to be able to take them on. So it's not just like I can spend $30,000 on product and then turn that into $60,000 worth of product per se. And I'm using that as like a very
broad, generalized
100% off wholesale. But like what I'm saying is, like, when you do that, like, how do you've got to go, okay, cool, that you've basically got to cut that secondary number in half because you don't know how many defects you're going to get.
Right. So you're going to have defects in everything you order from the manufacturer. There's always going to be a percentage of defects that you just have to account for. And you can account for that in your pricing, but also knowing that, like, it's not just, okay, I've accounted for defect. It's now people complaining and blaming the product for either their user error or, like a lot of lashes go straight, or they have blue in certain lights, or their clients, just complain that they itch, or they, like you said, they don't fan well on the strip. Like, there's just so much, because then you have to handle.
You shouldn't use your breakdown. That's a poor quality PPT. Sorry, had to say it.
But that's where most people start, right? They get hit up on Instagram by some, Muhammad in India. Yep. Dear sir or madam, and they're like, sure, I'll try it out. Oh, this is only $1.50 a lash tray, and if I sell it for $12. But it's just so much, because then you have to deal with the customer support aspect, which is keeping you on your computer. Are you going to send them a replacement? Because that's the cost you're going to eat, both for shipping both ways and for that product that you don't get to sell on. Or, are they going to be unhappy and not reorder from you, so you're risking losing that client? I mean, there is a lot that goes into the con side of it, or like at least the work.
There certainly is. I think that you've got to be prepared to take all that on.
Yeah.
And they are all of those things that you listed are real life supply supply things that customers will reach out with. And like I said, sometimes, like you said, sometimes it is user error. And if it is user error, you've got to be able to have the time to educate that lash artist. And the thing is, when you're offering that knowledge, because she might be using a product incorrectly, you don't always know how she's going to take that. Right. Based on her skill set and where she's come from. Some people have, they don't want to know how to do something differently. They don't want to change what they're doing. They don't want the knowledge.
They don't want to take responsibility for their results.
You have the customer service issue that you could really upset that customer by feeding that into her. And like, I've certainly encountered that when somebody's had problems with adhesive in the past. I've got a bunch of troubleshooting questions that we go through. Same for every customer. And some customers don't want to answer the questions. They don't, and at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a bad batch of adhesive.
Say it again for the people in the back, Bridget.
There's no such thing as a bad batch of adhesive. Maybe my one bottle was busted up. Well, one bottle in a couple of thousand is not like it doesn't work that way. I can understand if a Loctite, like a lid wasn't locked on properly, but normally you'll have a different response to it. A lot of the time that comes down to storage and how we're using it and the environmental conditions. By no means am I saying that there's no product defects when it comes to adhesive. There certainly can be product defects, and there certainly can be storage defects and storage issues and shipping. Like, you can't ship adhesive when it's hot, but what do you do in summer? Like, we have 40-degree summers here in Australia. Like, smart about the day that you order that adhesive.
Yes.
And we don't ship on certain days out of the warehouse in summer if it's over 40 degrees, because it's only going to sit in a hot truck.
Yeah. And it's education. It's the marketing aspect too. Like, it's not just this passive income. It has to be something that you're passionate about. And I think that's what comes through with you and the product is like, you fell in love with this product. Obviously Lashbox already had this system. Like, you get to do the fun stuff, which is be the distributor and like connect with the customers and do the marketing. You don't necessarily have to do all like the sourcing and all that stuff. You just get to like play with it. But there is also, you have to love the innovation of product development. Yeah.
Yes. And I suppose I'm incredibly blessed to be a part of the Lashbox family. I'm incredibly blessed for this opportunity. Like, Kate and Sylvia believed in me. And when that was offered to me, that was why I didn't say no, even though it was a challenge and it was terrifying. It was that, no, I think like this opportunity wouldn't have been offered if they didn't think I could do it. And if they think that I can do it, I need to give it 1,000%, because that's an opportunity. And I think that we're obviously insulated from a lot of those sourcing issues that you're talking about when it comes to troubleshooting those sorts of things. I tell you what, I couldn't have those conversations. I don't know. Like, I like the innovation of it. Like, we can come up with ideas, and then we have a team at Lashbox that go and turn that into a product, and then we get said item to go and play with when it's released, and it's so exciting. So being a part of that, but not being inside that, that's special, right? But knowing that we've got a team that love it as much as I love it, I don't know, the hardest thing for me the last 18 months is not being able to jump on a plane and go over to our office, because being in that space with the girls and learning and challenging things and questioning things and playing with things and you know, like working on development and even our self-education, I really miss that. I miss that vibe over there. And over here, we've obviously got our own culture here in our office, but we're a small business here. We're a team of 3. Yeah. People think that we're like
energy.
We are a global company, and we've got a global network, and we've got a global reach. But here, essentially in Australia, we're a team of 3 and 2 interstate educators that I love dearly. So we're a small business. We're not
thousands of members of Lashbox. All right. Is there anything else you want to share about education or supply that you think would be relevant to the people listening?
I think education, if you want to be an educator, know that your heart has got to be in the right spot. And I encourage that like wholeheartedly. But be the change that you wish to see. Challenge the narrative. Challenge yourself to learn more if you want to share with others. You can do it. It is possible. But you've got to really want to do it with your whole heart.
Yeah, because otherwise the obstacles, because you're going to face obstacles in any aspect of business. No matter what you do, you're learning a new skill set. You're putting yourself out there in ways that you haven't before. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to challenge your comfort level and your security box that you've stayed in. So if you don't have this greater purpose driving you and it's just about the money, it's not going to be worth the money. And you're never going to see the results that you want.
If you need to make more money in your business, there's other ways that you can change the narrative of what you got going on. If you got into lashes because you wanted to make women feel beautiful. So for me, dermal therapies like skin therapies was really important. I had cystic acne. So for me, that was like understanding the ingredients, science, whatever, getting the results. But the results with skin treatments, they're like 6, 12, 24 months, and you need to work as a team, and your client's got to work on side you. With lashes, I could give somebody lashes and they open their eyes and they were like, oh my God, I love you, right? And I love these lashes, and I get up every day and I like, with or without makeup, I'm happy, right? They feel beautiful. So for me, that was really important. If that's why you got into lashes, because you could make people feel beautiful, but you're not able to quantify that into like a return that should be there, you need to talk to Tara. You need to go.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
You need to go and work on that business and find that passion again. If there was something that sparked you to go down this journey anyway, why rework the whole wheel if we haven't made the first part work correctly? You know, like if we can make what we've got going on function, flow smoothly, in an ideal world, I'd still have both businesses going on, but I backed myself into a corner. We were too busy in the salon. Like there was mistakes that I made there as a business owner because I was spreading myself too thin. That was why I had to make that choice between one or the other. And that's something that I suppose, I don't think I'd do anything differently, actually.
I could have helped you with that, but I wasn't around. I don't think I was around then. But no, it is true. Like I talk about shiny object syndrome all the time. And I think a lot of people with education and supply see it as a shiny object syndrome. I'm not making enough money over here. So if I try doing this, maybe I'll make more money over here, whatever that may be. Volume lashes, microblading, Supplier, Educator, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. What everybody wants is the result they think whatever avenue they're on is going to get them. But if you if you quit before you ever get to the end result, then you'll never get there. You'll just keep starting new path. And you will never get to that result. So if you can get to that result, then feel free. You'll have either more time or more money to copy and paste it and go do something else.
Yeah, to replicate the wheel elsewhere. And I think that's, they're big lessons that people can learn. And like I said in the very beginning, we go and take a lash class to learn lashes. We need to go and take a business class to learn how to run our business.
Yep.
For me, I had a corporate background. I worked in marketing. I had certain knowledge that helped me run my business better. And I tell you what, I didn't apply it to my salon for the first 2 years when I stepped away from that marketing role. God knows what was wrong with me. Like, why was I
did the same thing. I did the same thing.
And then when I did, I was like, holy shit, look what I can do here. Right. And I don't know if it's from the corporate world. I was so like over the stress of the things that I'd gone through that for me, it was like a vacation. It was like a 2-year vacation until I realized I wasn't making any money. And I was like, you got to put your finger out, girlfriend. This is not going to work, or you're going to end up back in that corporate world. You've got to work it out.
I did the same thing. It took a business coach for me to realize, like, oh, I already know this stuff. Like, it took me paying somebody $1,500 to be like, oh, here's how you do marketing. And I was like, duh. Like, what was I thinking? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So and I think that, you know, there's a way that you can make it work. If you fell in love with lashes for the love of lashes because you had lashes and then you wanted to make somebody else feel that way you felt after you had your first set of lashes, you can turn that into a profitable wheel. You've just got to work at it right. And once you've got that going right, then go into education. Then put your skills elsewhere and replicate it. And I think that there's a lot that can be done, and I don't want to discourage anybody in any step of the way, but you got to look at your pros and cons and work out where you're at.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people doing the narrative of what's pro about it without the real behind the scenes, and that you can make 6 figures in your first year and like that talk. And I want to just make sure we're setting expectations in reality.
But the reality of it is there's a lot of work before you get there. And I do see that a lot. I see a lot of lash classes advertised, like the amount of them that show up on my Instagram stories and my feed. You know, like you can turn this, like this can be like a whole separate income stream, and you can be making this kind of money. And we've got to remember that turnover and profit are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we call that sales or revenue versus profit is much different. So just because the business makes 6 figures, you're making maybe 50 grand, but probably less.
Maybe half with the labor hours.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Brigette,
there's a lot that goes into it, but I encourage you, learn how to run the business. Once you do those things, then you can do the other things.
Right. Once you've learned business, you can do it as a service, you can do it as product, you can do it as, I mean, there's so many different ways. Even if you're an employee somewhere, learning how to run a business, you're going to work in the business. So all of that education is relevant.
Well, yeah, learning how to run that business whilst you're an employee somewhere else, that was how I learned. Yeah. I was a marketing manager. That was how I understood how all those other things went together. And when I was able to apply them to my own business, I had to break it back down. I had to look at things differently, but it wasn't about reinventing the wheel. It was about doing things the way they should have been done to begin with. And that was not making my price list based on what salon said up the road here does and salon said down the road here does, and I'm somewhere in the middle. When I had that realization 2 years in, I was like, where did I even create these prices from? Like, what was I thinking when I created that price menu and I broke the numbers down? I was like, oh girl, you got to change some things here.
Right.
You got to change.
They're not going to pay your bills. Salon A
Yeah,
and B are not going to pay your bills.
Yeah,
Love it.
We've got to get the client narrative right. So there's a lot that goes into it, and learning how to run your business. You're always going to be learning. Doesn't matter whether you're in product supply, education, offering services. There's always learning to happen, and don't ever be too arrogant to
ask for help,
to try to ask for help, or to try and do something differently again. To be like, no, this is what I know, and this is the only way that it can work. And like, if it's not working, there's always another way.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean doing something different.
Or quitting.
Don't quit. No, don't quit. I did a post about that the other week. We are big on that at Lashbox. Do not quit.
Don't quit. Don't give up. All right, awesome. Tell people where they can learn more about you and about Lashbox. Give me the spiel where we find you.
I'm on Instagram at LashboxBridge. Here in Australia, it's at LashboxLA Australia. If you're looking for our supplies in any other part of the world, at LashboxLA. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. We'll link that up in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for coming on. God, I hope this clears up so I can get back to Australia, start connecting with my Aussies, and see you. Come see you.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited. I want the things will change. I keep willing it into the universe that life is going to go back to normal.
We are getting closer, hopefully, or at least going to figure out a way to live with the reality that is COVID. So here's hoping. All right. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Thank you.